hard dicking. Right in the eyebrows.
X, remember that time? Yes. Considering the situation, we don't have time for small talk.
I mean, you...
How's the weather on this plane that we're flying on, by the way?
This thing...
You got really lucky walking out of that door to nowhere and landing on this plane.
By the way, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about the logistics of the fact that there was a door that just led to open, empty space. And you fell and somehow landed on this convenient plane that was happened to be flying by at that exact moment.
You know.
You may be our only hope. But you may be our only hope. Time to kill me.
Bye-bye.
That's the weapon. It's not that one. Time stop.
Whoa.
Zawudo!
Overwhelming yellow.
How fast can you die in the frozen time, Pegasus?
If you die in a dream, you die in real life.
If you die in the game, you die in real life.
Oh, I took care of most of it.
I don't think that's actually his...
Whoa, my God.
I don't think that's actually his weakness, but it sure took care of a lot of things.
Yeah.
You're just a less interesting version of Storm Eagle.
Revolver Ocelot.
Let's play the game of, is this a Metal Gear Solid boss or Maverick from Megaman X? Bubsy Bobcat. Maverick from Megaman X. Okay.
Both, oddly enough.
So, time to save scum a little bit. Because you just know the game is going to fuck me like this.
Why did you run outside to a police officer and say, "Help, help, my mom is trying to fuck me"?
I was concerned. It was a concerning situation.
Oh, I get it now. That's a bad word, and I shouldn't use it in front of other people.
These are unskippable, by the way.
At least get some dinner, because I like to be wined and dined before I'm fucked! This is the second time I've been fucked!
Like Dairy Queen! Okay, we did it. Phew. Because you know the game would just fuck you over. I've seen it done. Where you collect all the parts for the Enigma and the shuttle, and the game still fucks you and says, like, nope, bad ending. Fuck you.
You didn't collect all the items in Bubble Bobble.
But I did. This game will just fuck you over. Oh, by the way, it's a Zero virus. This game doesn't even give a effing shit. This one. Yes. So we gotta do this again. So if you want to talk about the Nickelodeon book you read again. Because we're gonna be stuck doing this.
It was both not good and pretty good.
Yeah, that's always interesting, where, like, it's a book that's talking about something of interest, but it doesn't know what the interesting parts are.
Yes.
So it talks about shit that doesn't matter and you don't care about.
It simultaneously was, like, pointless and pretty cool. The cool parts were there were a lot of cool stories in there. It was definitely the adult... It was an adult thing, not that it was pornographic, but it's sort of like a little childhood destroying, knowing how much all the people who worked on your favorite childhood shows fucking hate each other.
Yeah, there is a little bit of disillusionment to knowing how the sausage was made.
Yes.
I do like it, but it is a little disillusioning.
Yes. The people who made a lot of those the three people who made Rugrats fucking hate each other. They still do. There was the whole Ren and Stimpy thing, obviously. 30 years later, and one of the people that was interviewed in the book was like, "Oh, there was a lot of resentment about that." He's like, for some reason, there's still a lot of resentment about that. Like,
yeah, Ren and Stimpy wasn't even a good show.
No, it wasn't. It totally fucking wasn't.
It's one of the, like, people like to say that Ren and Stimpy was so good, but it's just
huge
one of the
Earthbound fan excited to play it for the first time.
Yeah, it's just one of those, like, weird, like, oh, everyone needs to go see Sausage Party because we need to support animation for adults.
Yeah.
Like, they can make a good one, though. They can make it be good.
That show was never good, but that story is kind of interesting, and there's a lot of bad feelings still about that because, both sides did shitty things. Nickelodeon didn't know what they were doing at the time, but...
Yeah, I mean, like, the concept of saying the golden age of Nickelodeon is kind of disingenuous from the get-go.
It was cool because there were a lot of cool stories like that in there. There was a lot of tidbits, like they talked to people you wouldn't expect, like the people who designed the logo or the people who...
Yeah, that's really, like, to think about. Someone had to, like, do a design committee and, like, do a presentation to the CEOs and be like, here's our logo. They had to get approved. It reminds me of, like, those charts that people always post about, like, the Pepsi logo redesign.
Yeah. It was like when they decided on what the station's colors would be, the orange and
kind of a non-standard choice.
Yeah, and because obviously Nickelodeon in the late '80s was rebranded because it used to be Pinwheel.
Yeah,
and then they rebranded as Nickelodeon.
And it used to have like a bunch of weird Canadian shows, like Salute
you can't
My
do that
Shorts.
on television. Yeah, and like those initial like. The first sort of mascots of Nickelodeon, I guess, were that doo-wop group. I can't remember the name of.
Yeah,
they were talking about that, like
that.
People who did early advertisements, people who did early music spots, stuff like that. There were some interesting people in there you just wouldn't think of. But at the same time, there was a lot of stupidity. I skipped an entire chapter.
Yeah. Just because it's not talking about anything that matters.
It's just stupid shit. And
politics.
Yeah, and I skipped over a bunch of it. I skipped an entire chapter, but there were a lot of interesting things in it. I think the title is misleading.
Yeah, you think of it. You look at the title where it's like Slime: An Oral History of the Golden Age of Nickelodeon.
Yeah,
and you think like, oh, it's going to be like a trivia book.
Well, not even that.
Or like an origin story.
I thought it's just not what you think it is. It's not at all that. It's definitely
not all that.
It's definitely worthy of reading for some of the stories in it, but it's by no means like a comprehensive. What I thought it would be was just a comprehensive history of Nickelodeon through the late '80s and through the '90s.
Yeah,
and
when it became Nickelodeon.
Yeah, and it really wasn't a very satisfying that. So it didn't really meet my expectations there, but I'm happy I read it. There were a lot of interesting stories. There were like two moments. The woman who did Dee Dee's voice on Rugrats, she said two really funny things in it, and I can't remember what the first one was, but she referred to Angelica as a little bitch, which I thought was really funny. To think of Dee Dee Pickles, she was. To think of Dee Dee Pickles saying that little bitch. But there were some interesting quotes and stuff like that. I learned that I really, really like Mark Summers. He's a cool dude. And I never even really watched Double Dare. But...
What's that story about, like, some kid almost fucking died
yeah.
on an episode of Double Dare?
Twice, there was that one episode where Mark Summers genuinely thought the kid broke his neck.
Yeah.
And was like, because the kid did have a compound fracture on this show. Because he lied on the application.
And said he was older than he was?
No.
Oh. That was like
why
the
would
Army.
that matter? And he said, they asked, have you ever broken a bone before? And he said no. And it turned out he had like glass bones, and he had broken his arm like 7 times. And he slipped on
fuck that kid.
like the slime or something and got a compound fracture.
Better of.
And Mark Summers, who again has obsessive compulsive disorder, had to like leave the. It was so graphic that he ran out of the studio. Like it was so fucked up. But they were like
air that one.
They were like, they were like talking about. I mean, that show was dangerous as fuck.
Any kind of like obstacle course
and it
for
was
children.
So low budget, and they said, when they were working on it, they had a risk assessment guy. The studio, Nickelodeon sent a risk assessment guy who just was like, "You are fucking crazy! Like everyone has to have helmets. You have to have this. You have to have that." And they're like, "We just couldn't afford most of that." So that was just a dangerous fucking show.
I remember, like, there was also a story about, like, this is a part of the game where we're just doing a podcast, by the way.
Yeah, and we're doing a podcast and there's a video game going on.
That happens a lot when we play Capcom games, I notice.
Yep.
There is a lot of backtracking in these games.
They're a common offender.
and I ran out of the interesting thing to talk about really quickly.
Yeah, that was fast.
There's not a lot to go. It's just the game again, but this time with X.
Yeah.
There was that story about, like, they didn't finish cleaning up.
Oh yeah, in the summer.
And then came back to do the next season, and it just smelled horrible in the studio or something like that.
The original slime was oatmeal based, and they were like,
which doesn't keep.
Yeah,
in the hot summer under studio lights.
I was gonna say, even under the studio lights, it would start to look really bad. It was pretty gross. Yeah, they talked about the various recipes for slime.
I also like that story about, like, Cartoon Network bought ad space on Nickelodeon specifically to do an attack ad against Nickelodeon.
I don't remember that.
Like, they paid a premium to advertise on Nickelodeon to tell people, come watch Cartoon Network instead. So,
what was the other?
We have the Falcon armor, finally. So I can actually show this off. So this game has not just the 5th armor, as it could be known, but we have the Falcon armor, and then a second set of armor. Which, again, first time in the series, they had 2 different sets of armor. The next game would proceed to have 3 sets of armor. And then Mega Man X7 would also have, like, 2 different sets of armor. So again, like, this is, like, the first... I don't actually know. But it feels like this was the first game that the people making this game made. And again, they made it almost entirely without supervision. And they were like, okay, well, Keiji Inafune's not going to make these games anymore. So let's just try a bunch of shit out. Like, this is like some kind of weird changing of the guard thing. And it was like, let's just try different shit. And, like, see what might work. Let's experiment with, not because it's the last game and let's just do whatever we want, but we're gonna make the rest of the series by ourselves. Let's try out all this new shit instead. Let's see, maybe we can just have optional boss fights.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do 2 different sets of armor. Maybe you can choose which character you want to play as and switch back and forth. You can play one level as X and Zero, which is a thing that every subsequent game, 6, 7, and 8, all let you choose which character you want to play as you go through the series. As you go through the levels. And they would even expand on that in Mega Man X7, where you can switch back and forth between 2 different characters within the level. Which makes a lot of replay value, because now I have to show you when I replayed the game and got the different dialogue from the Mavericks at a different point in the game. And Mega Man X7 would do something interesting where there's 3 playable characters in Mega Man X7, and there is unique pre-boss fight dialogue with every single boss for all 3 different characters. And you can only fight them as one of those characters. So have fun with that replay value. So if you come and fight Squeaky Boy without needing to get the part, either fighting him first before you fired the Enigma, or after destroying the space colony, it's pretty much the same. Don't understand what's happening. Don't you understand the urgency of our present situation? Everybody dies. But also, Mad Cunt is... he's a Squeaky Boy.
You either kill yourself or you get killed. What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
The one with Flowey is the greatest. Everybody dies. You kill yourself or get killed. Do 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 do. Money, 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 motherfucker. Do 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 do.
Hello, motherfucker.
I've been holding on to these clips for so long, so I have to play them all.
Gotta play them all.
Axel the Reds is always the most interesting. Because this is just some guy. He, like, doesn't even have anything to do with Sigma.
Oh, damn it.
Did something happen to your glasses?
No, just, like, poked them and just made a huge fingerprint.
Because you look strong. Like, he doesn't even... If you lose, you will be my servant. So Axel the Red here is not even fighting X intending to kill him. He's like, I'll beat you. So where's the fan art of Axel the Red? Axel the Rose? Whatever. No, I think that's two on the nose. I think it was Axel the Red. Because Spike Rose Red.
Yeah.
Axel... Where is the fan art of Axel the Red having, like, X as his slave?
Where's that?
I can visually see in my mind's eye
Ditto.
an image of X, like, on his hands and knees, while Axel the Red sits on him with his legs crossed, holding, like, the thorny vine whip that he has.
I almost think that exists already.
I feel like it should, because I can see it so vividly in my mind. It should exist.
Shit time.
Again?
Imagine every second of your life, your stomach hurts and you're nauseous and you can't shit. That's my life. So, yeah, I don't have to imagine it, but imagine it.
I will. Who's that for? Doesn't even show you the heart tanks, dude.
Dude.
Okay. Yep. No, actually, I don't have this one. But I need these in order to get it. So, we have the falchion armor now. Instead of it, we have both the 4th armor and the 5th armor. No, X, you can't pretend that you're giving him names now. You know what that means is Alia made fun of him for just calling it the 4th armor. And he was like, no, it's just the falcon armor.
Yeah. Not because you pointed out the other thing, it's just a name I came up with.
So I think actually
Harvey Dent corner.
X starts out with the Falcon armor in Mega Man X6 also. So he just got sick of it and just started bringing his old armors with him into the beginning of every game now.
BYO armor.
Because Keiji Inafudi's not working on the series anymore, so fuck it. So this armor's kind of broken also, in case you haven't been noticing. So it changes the beam. Instead of it being like a big plasma blast that you shoot, and everyone even standing near you, and it sticks around forever, instead it's this, and it's smaller, but it looks kind of cool. And it passes through walls. But you jump, instead of doing a shitty hover, you have an invulnerable fly that lasts for like fucking 10 hours. And you use it. So, like, here's what's kind of bullshit, is if you do not start with X in that first level, if you choose 0 to start with, you kind of can't get the Falcon armor. And if you can't get the Falcon armor, you kind of can't get the second set of armor also. Because it requires the Falcon armor to come up here and get this part of the armor. You cannot get up here without the Falcon armor. Which means you can't get this second set of armor, the Gaia armor. Which means you can't get all of the collectible items in the game. Unless you start that first mission with X. So even before you start the game, you can fuck yourself and not even know it. Because game design.
That's Dark Souls.
That is some Dark Souls, my friend.
My friend.
My friend.
Bark with me if you were my dog.
Did you know that you should pick the pendant?
You don't chew Big Red, then fuck you.
Leg parts. I got some leggies. My leg goes all the way up.
Oh. I mean, there are people who don't have that luxury.
I would be concerned.
Mostly war vets.
I'm still trying to think of, like, examples of, like, just a truth, a lie told 100 times, you know?
Yes.
Oh, and you can't hover.
Yeah.
Or you can't dash in air now. You can't do that. But the dash lasts for fucking ever now!
Yeah. We use 10% of our brain. Yeah, if you cut a frog's brain out, blah blah blah.
What do people say about frogs' brains?
If you cut a frog's brain out, it'll still do things.
What? Who the fuck? I've never heard that one before.
You literally said that.
No, I said the frog in hot water.
Yeah. And to which I corrected, they cut the frog's brain out before they put it in the hot water, and that's why it didn't move.
I don't remember that explanation.
Oh.
I just remember saying that and you being like, that's stupid and bullshit.
and you know what? We're through. Yeah,
that is objectively incorrect. An animal will not do that.
You dumbass. Yeah,
I don't remember you, like, citing the explanation behind where that started.
Oh, well, I mean, I think it was a nature versus nurture experiment sort of thing. Where, like, took out the frog's brainstem or maybe even entire brain to see if its body would still react, and it didn't. And then people extrapolated from that. Oh, if you increase it slightly, like, that's totally made up. That's totally... It's like
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah,
Every time people reference Schrodinger's cat, they do not understand what the experiment was actually about.
Yes.
Like, oh, the cat was alive and dead. Do you actually fucking think that a room full of quantum theorist scientists actually thought the cat was alive and dead at the same time until the box was opened and proven otherwise?
Yeah, you don't get what that's saying.
The guy did the experiment, like, basically as a satire because he thought something that another scientist said was stupid. And he's like, you can't fuck... Jesus. He was basically going like, yeah, that works for particles. It doesn't work for everything else.
It's the difference between Newtonian physics and quantum mechanics.
You can't fucking, like, say, like, oh, fucking like, what is it? The thing that you look at it changes?
The observer?
Well, that's with, like, people, but I mean with, like, when you measure Heisenberg?
Quantum?
Particles?
Quantum.
Okay. I don't know. But it's like that thing where, like, when you try and measure them, the mere act of measuring it makes it non-measurable or something else. That's stupid.
Change the outcome by measuring it.
Yeah. Like, sometimes, like, they were talking about fucking quantum physics, and the guy was like, oh, and he's like, no, and I'll prove it with this example of, look, the cat. It's fucking alive. You're an idiot. People go, oh, the cat's alive and dead at the same... Like, no! You're stupid and don't understand what the experiment was about.
Yeah. You don't get it.
You don't get it, and you're talking. And I don't understand why you're doing these two things. It also reminds me of, like, whenever you have, like, it's like that. Their interview with Keiji Inafune is just where people are getting it from, even though he didn't say what they're saying he said.
Look at the text.
And it reminds me of, like, every time, like, someone, like, developers, artists can't, like, give interviews. Because people just make wild extrapolations about shit they say.
Yeah.
Like, I talk about it in Sonic Generations, where... I'm trying to remember now. Not what I'm referencing, I'm trying to remember what I'm supposed to do next.
Definitely.
Vegas Volt Kraken. Ugh, sneeze. So now I have the Gaia Armor. The Gaia Armor fucking sucks. Oh god, I have to do this again. I actually don't, though, so... Look how slow it is! Like, this actually fucks me up.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Ooh, damn. So there was, like, an interview or something. Like, a developer quote, where, some guy said, like, oh, we were thinking about having Steve Urkel do the voice for Classic Sonic, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And, like, clearly it was someone in a board meeting at some point referenced the old Western cartoons and said, like, oh, wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
And he was just telling that story. And from that, everyone went, oh, originally they were gonna have Classic Sonic be voiced by Steve Urkel. We reached out to the actor who played Steve Urkel, and, like, apparently they didn't contact... Like... That was never, ever what they were actually going to do. that was just a story that he told, and you're an idiot.
Well, it's like when they were working on Star Fox 64 3D, and Miyamoto jokingly, while laughing, said, if this doesn't sell well, there won't be any more Star Fox games.
I'll cut off my head with a chainsaw.
And that was literally what that statement was, what all the articles were. Miyamoto says that if blah, 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 you're a fucking idiot. At least that's being disingenuous, like, on purpose to sell.
This is you don't understand what human communication is.
Yeah.
Or, like, there was another interview with, like, when the Tomb Raider reboot happened. Let me talk about the armor first. So, with this armor, you stick to the wall. The blaster shot looks visually different. It charges much faster, and it does a lot more damage. And you don't take damage when you stand on spikes, as will be shown in a second. This armor's stupid, and I hate it. The Falcon, and it's not just because... Like, the Falcon armor is fucking amazing and mildly game-breaking, but this armor would still suck, even if the Falcon armor wasn't awesome. So, oh, and they don't go as far. They don't clear the whole screen. Fucking shit. Oh my god.
Shit, dude.
There was, like, an interview with, the writer of the Tomb Raider reboot. The very first game to ever have a female protagonist.
The very first.
This reboot of the Tomb Raider series.
Yep.
The very first game to have a female protagonist.
Yep.
This reboot. Not the original game.
No.
The reboot is the first game to have a female protagonist. Let's all talk about how important and revolutionary it is that Lara Croft is the first female protagonist in video games.
Yes.
Until next week when a new one comes out.
There's never been a white chick in a video game before.
Ever.
Ever.
Ever. Especially not the original Tomb Raiders.
Star Wars.
Doesn't count because she was hot.
That was 1997.
Doesn't count because triangle tits.
Triangle titties.
Anyway, there's an interview with the writer. Oh, I can actually show the spikes, but I won't. I did it.
You did it.
Where they were like, what were some, like, stuff you wanted to do, or, like, talk about, like, when you were writing it. And she did... And again, if you read the article, she goes like, you know, when you're a writer, you always think about, like, it would have been interesting to think, like, you think about stuff, and you're like, oh, that would have been an interesting challenge, or, like, just, you know, hypothetical scenarios. And she said, like, or no, I think it was actually the interviewer who said, like, would you have made Lara Croft, like, a lesbian? Or something like that. Like, he was literally like...
Total babes.
Yeah, like, what's it called in a courtroom? Like an argumentative question or leading a witness?
Question.
Yeah, it's a leading question. And her answer was like, well, that would have been an interesting challenge as a writer to write Lara Croft, a pre-existing character, as a lesbian.
He asked an answer.
Yes.
And it didn't matter what she said.
Yes. And thus, the article headline was, Ryan, like... Who's the guy who wrote the Amazing Maurice and also the Discworld books?
Terry Pratchett?
Terry Pratchett, yeah. Rihanna Pratchett. That's who wrote the reboot game. His daughter. Before he died. Said, like, originally wanted Lara Croft to be a lesbian. And it's like, that's not what she said.
Not what she said. You
said that.
And then
she answered, like,
a stock kind of response.
Yeah, like a
would have been an
yeah, okay,
challenge.
I guess.
I guess, sure.
If you say so.
I'm a writer, and I could have written that, sure.
I didn't, but
I didn't, and they didn't ask me to, and they didn't want me to. But if they had,
yeah,
I was getting paid, so
I really didn't care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me.
And like, not only that, but like, then the sequel came out, and people weren't like, why isn't Sam in this game? Why didn't they expand on Laura being a lesbian by having her girlfriend? It's like, what the fuck are you people doing? Now they're treating it like Laura being a lesbian is canon.
That's the delusion. That is the fucking delusion.
Like, just a lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. And people just regurgitate absolute nonsense with complete sincerity.
Yep.